our chairman and deputy chairman are all both otherwise engaged. We need to elect a chairman to chair this meeting. Any nomination? I nominate Mr. Sin Chung Kai, seconded by Mr. Peter Cheung. Are you willing to accept the nomination, Mr. Sin? Well, I've done it once. All right, any objection? Any second nomination? No. Thank you.
OK。OK， 嗱，我哋咧就按時間開會啊。就首先我哋
All right, and now call the meeting to order. First, confirmation of minutes of previous meeting. The meeting was held on the 18th of March. The draft minutes were sent to members on the 16th of April. Any proposed amendments? If not, then minutes confirmed. Information paper issued since the last meeting, CB 21514. Administration's response to the issue raised in a letter from Mr. Tang Ka-piu regarding the amount of severance payment and long-service payment. Please refer to this paper for information. Date of next meeting and items for discussion. Please refer to paper 15424, bracket 01, and also bracket 02. For a list of follow-up action and list of outstanding items for discussion, please invite the officials to come to join us now. The government has proposed 2 items for the next meeting, and that is a review of the effectiveness of the employment in one stop at Tuen Sui Wai and occupational safety performance in Hong Kong. Do members wish to propose any additional items? Mr. Tang Ka-piu. Mr. Deputy, Mr. Acting Chairman, last time we had a discussion on severance payment. Well, I think we should have a discussion. We have received the response. The severance payment has not been changed since 1990s. They should explain why. And if we want to adjust the payment, there should be a mechanism. Can we add one additional item for the next meeting? That's point number 1. Second, of course, we are concerned about employment in Tuen Sui Wai, but there will be an employment job center to be opened in Tung Chung. Can we also take it up as well? Other members, any comments? Mr. Leung Yu Chung. The secretary is now with us. I want to talk about the progress with the statutory minimum wage. We are talking about items for the next meeting. Can we have a progress report? Can you do that, secretary, at the next meeting? Well, you have been monitoring the progress. You know the committee is now entering the consultation phase. Public consultation has just been completed. They are analyzing the data before the end or by the end of October. They would make some recommendations to the CE Council. Well, there isn't much they can say at this stage, but we would come back at the appropriate juncture to tell you what the Executive Council thinks about the proposal and what the administration thinks about the proposal. But since they are analyzing the data and they are about to submit a report to the CE, although they have conducted the public consultation, they haven't come to listen to members. So we are going to have a meeting in June. I don't know whether we are going to have another meeting after that in July. Yes. Mr. Tang Ka-piu has a valid point, and of course, statutory minimum wage is important. But perhaps we can have a discussion on statutory minimum wage in July. That is to say, before the summer break. I don't mind whether it's June or July. Perhaps we can also listen to deputations. Well, I think, well, if we wait until the government has presented its proposals, it's too late. Different organizations are making different proposed levels. Or we can conduct a public hearing and invite the administration to join us. I hope before the report is submitted to the CE, they will listen to the community first. All right. And if you need to invite deputations, there's all the more reason that we should do it in July, because we need time for preparation. So let's deal with the proposed item from Mr. Tang Ka-piu. And we will talk about severance payment. Okay. As for whether we should cover Tung Chung on top of Tin Shui Wai, well, it's up to the administration because they are talking about employment services. Maybe they can give us a supplementary paper to cover Tung Chung as well, Secretary? Or the next paper, the paper on Tin Shui Wai, is a very focused one. We provide a one-stop service. We are going to open up a new job center in Tung Chung by the end of the year. Perhaps, Mr. Tang, you can wait a bit longer. Let's concentrate in this important service in Tin Shui Wai. All right. Then we would add one item for the June meeting, then i.e. along service payment. And let's include the job center in Tung Chung. Let's include this in the list of outstanding items for discussion. And I've heard members. Do you have any objection to have a public hearing in July to listen to deputations regarding the setting of the new statutory minimum wage rate? Well, I'm just acting chairman. I would relay members' wishes to the chairman, and then the clerk will be asked to make necessary arrangements. All right, now let's move on. Progress of the work of the Standard Working Hours Committee. I would ask the Secretary to give a brief introduction, and then members can ask questions. Those who would like to ask questions, hands up, please. Secretary, over to you for a brief introduction. We set up the committee on standard working hours in April last year, and then we came to brief members in July. We would like to talk about the progress so far. The policy on standard working hours is very controversial. It would affect the labor supply, the business environment, labor relationship. There are wide implications for. Because of the complexity, we set up the committee led by Mr. C.H. Leung. I would like to thank Dr. Leung and 23 members on the committee. All the LAB members are on the committee, including the Commissioner for Labor. And I have 2 members with me today. And there are people from the academia, the general public, and other sectors. The tasks to be undertaken by the committee are important. There was a study in 2012 on standard working hours. We need to facilitate a wide public discussion in the community on all these issues so that we can build a consensus, and that would guide us on the way forward. The committee has been working very hard. For the past 30 months, they have convened 6 meetings. and they have two working groups, one on working hours consultation and another on working hours study. And there's also a thematic study on working hours. Mr. Ng Chao-pak, an LAB member for the Labour side, would chair the working hours consultation working group. As for the working hours study working group, is chaired by Mr. Lau Chin-ho, an employer representative on the LAB. And there are also the publicity and the public education activities carried out by the committee. You may see some TV APIs. There's a dedicated website, and some roving exhibition have been organized. And they have targeted 4 particular groups for publicity. For example, sectors and industries with longer working hours, specific professionals, and major trade organizations. And a consultant has been engaged to help with public consultation and an analysis of data collected.
Consultation started on the 28th of January, and 20 sessions had been organized. On the 29th up to the 26th of July, there will be large consultation sessions. Members of the public are welcome to sign up for attending. We had placed front page advertisements on that. All members of the public are welcome. Trade associations will carry out questionnaire surveys. 750 questionnaires would be distributed. Trade unions and trade associations would be consulted. We welcome public views. Before the end of July, views from the public are welcome. And in collecting statistics for long working hours, we've commissioned a consultancy to do the job. It will be a household survey, surveying at least 10,000 employed persons with very detailed interviews. They'll have to fill out very detailed particulars. And then at least 1,500 persons engaged in special occupations and professions with relatively long working hours or distinctive working hour patterns are to fill out the questionnaires. That will be conducted in August. I'd like to take this opportunity to appeal to society that if your household is chosen as a survey target, I hope you cooperate with the study workers to fill out the details so that we can accurately master the information on working hours. Apart from dedicated surveys, the committee had formulated several factors to analyze employers, employees, and the overall economy of Hong Kong, the employment market, the competition situation, and our competitiveness in various areas. We hope that by the end of this year, a report can be submitted to the committee. After receiving the report and take reference from the results, the committee will map out the next step, including the drafting of different working hours for forging social consensus and further exploration. Mr. Hon Tang Ka-piu, Pun Siu Ping, Michael Tang Kwok-ka-ki, and Leung Yu Chung are on my list, and then Leung Chi-chang as well. This part will end at 5:35 p.m., so we'll have 40 minutes. 2468? Okay, 4 minutes per member. Mr. Wong Kok-heng? Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I have 2 questions for the Bureau Director. Just now I heard the Bureau Director introduce the work of the relevant committee. When C.Y. Leung ran for the C post in his manifesto, he said that he would mobilize legislation on standard working hours. So they're starting. I, of course, welcome this move. Yet I'm also concerned about the work progress. The Bureau Director said that there are now 2 committees that are carrying out consultation. There are 2 working groups in progress, and reports are to be produced by the end of this year. What about next year and the year after next? What is the plan of the government? Mr. Si Wai-leung, the chief executive, said in his manifesto that he will study legislation. So the direction is clear. Now, after the submission of reports at the end of the year, in implementing the CE's study on legislation, I believe the administration has its own plans. I don't think they'll just rely on 2 working groups. Of course, the 2 working groups are collecting views and doing consultation. I'd like to be more focused in my questions. Has the administration arranged for certain industries and sectors to be studied which have overtime pay and which trades and industries do not have overtime payment? So you have to collect these information so that our legislative program in future will be more focused. Well, if they work beyond the standard working hours, there may or may not be overtime pay. It may be uncompensated overtime work, but there may also be overtime payment. So do employers want their employees to work overtime? So have you carried out such surveys? 2 questions. Bureau Director, thank you, Mr. Wong, for your questions. The administration attaches importance to these issues. That's why we have such a high-level committee to take up the work. Well, over 10 meetings were convened in just 6 months. 13 meetings were convened in 6 months. Leaders of chambers of commerce and trade associations should have a chance to meet the committee. Now, we must allow them time to compile the 2 reports, which are crucial, because there will be year-on-year basic information. We must be data-based. We must have the latest statistics and data. Therefore, we have to wait till the end of the year when they submit the reports to the committee, which will then study the reports and map out the way forward. So, in the administration will serve as a facilitator. The working groups are very serious in their work. We must allow them time and room to work. At the moment, overtime payment is paid in certain cases. Chairman, can I have a few more minutes? We'll have 10,000 employees chosen with a dedicated target. In the past, for overtime payment, we only sought information from the employers. This time we're fair. We'll also consult the employees. Do they work overtime? Is there overtime payment? Any other form of compensation and so forth. So the reports are very important. By the end of the year, we know clearer the data, so we'll have a more objective and fairer view. Mr. Tang Ka-piu, Mr. Chairman, I don't think the Bureau Director can disclose anything at this juncture. Recently, I came across a case. The request is very easy or very simple. It is overtime payment for extra working hours. Now, St. Paul's Hospital has this laundry staff who work 48 hours a week under the contract, but on Monday they always work 2 extra hours because they don't open on Sundays, so all the clothing have to be cleared on Monday. So on Monday the working hours will be long. But then over a year, nobody told that employee what to do, and he lodged a complaint, and he told that the Labor Department was consulted so long as the wages is no less than $30 per hour, they will not be breaching the law. Now, the Bureau Director that in the past, the Census and Statistics Department conducted a survey yearly. Well, the employee will write 48 hours a week according to the contract. But in reality, that's not the case. They're not paid in accordance with the number of working hours. We're not talking about occasional OT, but regular OT. The employers just consider that payment has already been made for the overtime work. Now, trade unions and trade associations have been working very hard, particularly the staff side told us that they had more frequent meetings, more meetings than the LAB. Well, let's not talk about standard for the time being. Is it 48 or 40 or 1.5 or legislation? We just want to know actual extra working hours. How should they be compensated for? Well, Dr. Leung is very experienced in this. So how's the government going about this? What about employment ordinance? Anything in it? Secretary, in the employment ordinance, there's no clear stipulation in relation to overtime work. Frankly speaking, there's no stipulation in the law. You must look at the employment contract. Therefore, we actually understand that case mentioned by Mr. Tang. We're making arrangements to handle that case. And Mr. Tang Ka-piu, it's your time. Please continue. Thank you, Chairman. I have something to say. The actual fact is that I'm not asking for extra benefits. It's very clear if it is 48 hours a week. If I work for 50 or 52, you're not doing anything. You need the committee to form consensus first before you treat this simple issue. Mr. Chairman, we have to be realistic. Chairman, so every time you have underestimated the published working hours. No. In this survey, we're going to obtain information from the employees. In the past, we only obtained information from the employers and the institutions. This time, we would like to be more precise and accurate. So we target 10,000 employees, their employees. So we only obtain information from the employees. Then the information obtained will more reflect the reality. Beyond the employment contract, how many extra working hours, compensated or otherwise? Well, Mr. Chang, if you don't handle this issue, eventually they will go to the Labor Department and then the court or the Labor Tribunal, Well, through mediation, over 70% of cases have been handled. Of course, if no agreement is reached, well, usually 60 to 70% ex gratia payment. So usually the employee only received a discounted payment. So, Bureau Director, should you not consider legislative amendment? It's not actually overtime payment or compensation. Mr. Chairman, the committee was established 13 years ago. 6 months ago, and 13 meetings were 13 months ago, and a lot of meetings had been convened. And the Bureau Director will leave it to the committee to work out the arrangements. We, of course, respect the effort of the committee members. In the LAB, we're told that hopefully by the end of this year, the report is completed, and then by early next year, there will be some recommendations. But then by the end of this year, the LAB will elect or will get new members. If you don't have a more specific timetable in 2016 and 2017, we have 2 elections, the LegCo election and the CE election, respectively. So within this term of the SARJ, can you fix something? And in terms of time frame, can you expedite your work? With the participation of the government, can we have the preliminary options by January 2015. And then you also have the promotional activities, including TV programs, roving exhibitions, and so forth. As the Bureau Director said, they're mobilizing these activities. May I know how much public money has been used on these arrangements? Mr. Chairman, in terms of effectiveness and public funds, I'll defer to the Director for a supplement. As for whether or not by the first quarter of next year we can come up with some options, I'll bring that piece of opinion back to the LAB. I believe we need to give them sufficient time. The reports will be submitted to the committee only by the end of this year, and the committee has to go through the reports. We will hope to work out several options and forge social consensus. We need society to conduct in-depth discussions into those options. We're only collecting information now and doing promotion. We're promoting discussions. So after the dedicated surveys with data analysis, then we can base on certain data. Then we can have a basis for working out certain options. I believe we need some time. Anyway, your aspiration, that is, first quarter of next year, is noted. You want to do it as soon as possible, as quickly as possible. We only have a few more months to go in 2014. And then in 2016, we hope the committee will grasp its time well. As Dr. Leung Chiu said, he would grasp its time well.
Commissioner, Mr. Poon, there are 12 labor officers dealing with the work of the committee and related matters. And we have some $2.5 million of publicity. We do it on means of transport, dedicated website, and other promotional programs such as exhibitions. Would like to reach out, and in the consultation sessions, there are 13 of them. We hope local district personalities would participate. The consultation will last until the 31st of July this year. Mr. Michael Tin, when I was still a Manpower panel member last year, there were a few discussions. There are a few occasions during which we had a discussion. There are two perspectives. First, we want to have a work-life balance. Second, we want to have justice, and that is to say whether overtime should be remunerated. If it's for work-life balance, then we should discuss the maximum working hours, not the standard working hours. Because if it's just standard working hours, the hours can be exceeded. You just need to pay for the extra hours. The secretary says the committee will look into this. The committee has been in operation for 13 months, and 6 meetings have been convened. Have you come to any conclusion as to the purpose of the discussion? For what? What's the purpose of the discussion? You have gone to such length, you have conducted surveys, and so on and so forth. What's the purpose of all these? And if you don't have any purpose, when are you going to get one? And second, if you say it's about justice, I've already put this question to you, and that is why can't you enhance the employment ordinance instead of coming up with something mandatory? For example, you can provide that employees can refuse to work overtime, or overtime should be remunerated at 1.5 or twice the normal rates. And it was also said that the Standard Working Hours Committee would consider this proposal of mine. So what's the outcome of their consideration of my proposal, Secretary? Secretary? Yes, in fact, you raised those proposals a year or so ago. The committee has borne your questions in mind. And therefore it's important to collect data and to conduct publicity. In the community, the focus seems to be about how or the level to be set, or the over time the rate should be pegged. But there is little discussion on the policy objective. And we have to look at other things such as the application, the scope of application, and how to cope with changes. So in the coming 8 weeks during the consultation, we should discuss the purpose of standard working hours policy. We'll try to gauge public views. It's important for the building consensus. You mentioned whether it can be left to the mutual agreement. Well, your memory is so good. Yes, the committee did discuss this. And in the future deliberation and consideration, they would take this up as a part of the options. What is the purpose of the review on working hours? You have had 6 meetings, and you haven't come to any conclusion. The committee is of the view that there must be a discussion in the community to build a consensus on standard working hours. We must build a consensus on the objective of such a policy. So you ask the community, we need to build a consensus. And that is how should we set the policy on standard working hours, on working hours rather. We must build a consensus on the purpose of such a policy. Dr. Kwok Ka-kei, Mr. C.Y. Leung promised the labor sector to implement the policy on standard working hours. More than a year has passed. I tried to ask people from different professions as regards what the government is doing. No one knows what is going on. You want to have a wide consultation and a consensus built. How can that be possible? Most people don't even know what you are talking about. On the committee, you have representatives from the employer side and the employee side, but the public are very ignorant of what's going on. For low-income people and the grassroots, but they need standard working hours to protect them. It's a minimum in the form of protection. Of course, professions have divergent views. I understand that. If you say all medical doctors must be subject to the application of standard working hours, like what we have in the UK, it's 44 or 48 hours and it's rigid, then it would have a significant impact on our healthcare system. But you have never present such in-depth issues for public discussion. I just don't understand what your publicity and public education efforts are about. Are you just trying to drag your feet and then wait until the expiry of the CE's term? And of course, you can say that there's no consensus, and without any consensus, you cannot implement the policy. I think that's what the government is after. Dr. Kwok asked about the work of the committee. One of the duties of one of the targets of the committee is to raise public concern. They have met with many organizations and listened to them. And starting from the 29th this month, there will be public consultation sessions. We have TV APIs. We have launched a publicity and advertisement on the bodies of buses, and there's this front page advertisement. Consultation on working hours, and a public participation campaign is going on. We must raise public awareness to facilitate a public discussion before we can build a consensus. whether it should be 44 hours, 48 hours, whether the overtime rate is 1.5 times the normal rate or 2 times the normal rate. They are not very, they are not straightforward at all. And what's the purpose of doing this for the occupational safety and health or for justice? We have 6 months for the second stage to facilitate and promote a public discussion in the community. So that would take us until the end of November, and I believe in 2015 you would at least be able to come to a conclusion. You have completed by then the second stage of public consultation. You should come up with something. You should have made a decision in 2015. Or you can come back to tell us what your findings are in the consultation. We have answered different similar questions. At the end of this year, the 2 working groups would submit reports. There are 2 working groups, one on working hours consultation, the other on the working hours study. And then there will be proposals, options presented for public discussion, and we hope that we will be able to build some consensus. And there will be different options. After presenting the reports, the work will continue in 2015. They will work in earnest, and we'll try to ask them to streamline the processes and shorten the time as far as possible. Mr. Liu Yu-chung, we visited South Korea to learn how they introduced the standard working hour system there. I know that it's complicated. Their system is by no means not strict, not simple, but by no means simple, rather. We cannot come up with a piece of legislation lightly, but that's not the direction to go, the way forward for the committee. The committee may just look at policies. Policies may cover legislation, but not necessarily. That's the problem. I'm concerned that at the end of the study, you may say that we should go for more publicity and public education. It's just like what we did in respect of age discrimination. You promised legislation, but at the end of the process, you backtracked and said public education was the answer. I'm afraid that we're going to see a repeat of this. After one study, after another, you come up with some general policy, publicity, public education, promotion and encouragement, and that's it. It would be a waste of the committee's time and resources in all the efforts on exploration and studies. In the CE's manifesto, the wording is about a study into legislating for standard working hours. So the direction to go is to go for legislation, not any other policy. Although you have put up some advertisement, it's about working hours consultation without any direction proposed. So anything is possible. If you say that we are studying the possibility of legislation, well, you are just trying to answer questions on what you have done. You're just trying to tell people that you have done something. Is the committee responsible for looking into legislation? Well, there was the point that the government promised legislation on age discrimination, and then we backtracked. That was not the case. We never promised to legislate on age discrimination. So it was looked into, and the conclusion was that we should go for public education. As I've said, the 2 working groups under the committee in this exercise will submit their reports, and there will be options presented, and then the options would provide the focus for a community-wide discussion. As Dr. Ko Ka-piu has said, many people don't know what the discussion is about, and they have little knowledge about the issues, and there are no data to speak of. So we want to conduct a survey covering 10,000 employees. This thematic survey will be important because we have something to base on. For example, we can tell people how many employees currently do not get the overtime pay. But then I'm even more worried. You are going to come up with some proposed policies, and then you are going to consult people again before you consider legislation. I don't think you can complete the entire process within the current term of government. But legislation on standard working hours is a complicated issue, so we should proceed with care. That's what the DAB has been proposing. The two camps are very clear about their positions. The Labour side would like to have legislation. On the employer side is concerned about the cost implications. So it's important that you move ahead cautiously and comprehensively. Secretary, I wonder if the committee has looked into these 2 points. As I said last time, if we go for legislation, would it end up like the statutory minimum wage? And that is to say, the reshuffling effect. That is to say, for some jobs, you have to compete for available manpower.
Will this be covered in your study? Because this is very important. At the moment, for the employers, they will take into consideration the provisions in the law. Because costs are to rise, they have to consider that factor. So in the legislative process or in the drafting stage, if you're not going to consider this point, it will be worrying. Secondly, you say you are launching large-scale promotion exercises, but as the Bureau Director said just now, many people do not understand what's going on. So will you step up publicity and promotion? You mentioned TV programs, media advertisements, and consultation at the district level. Well, this is also publicity and promotion. You started in March, now it's May. I believe the situation is not too good about publicity. Many people are not sure what's going on. So will you put more resources on this? You said you would actively pursue publicity and promotion, but I don't think you have done enough. I think you must allow all sectors of the community to understand what's going on. Besides, you have to consider another major issue. I've been to overseas jurisdictions where they've implemented standard working hours. A driver may have to leave the vehicle suddenly, and a replacement or another driver is to take on the journey. So did you explain to members of the public anything about the aging population and demographic changes? Will the standard working hours be affected, and will you have corresponding measures? Bureau Director, Mr. Leung has brought out a whole series of core issues. For standard working hours, if they become statutory, there may be a whole series of consequences which we have to carefully consider. And what will be the impact on the labor market, on the economy? There will be pros and cons. For family life, there will be positive impact. But in other respects, there may be adverse impact. So we have to conduct detailed analysis and act prudently. When the two reports are submitted, the committee will have to follow up and explain to society. then we can forge social consensus, because in that process there will be different viewpoints to be shared by everybody. Then we can formulate the feasible options, the practicable options. So for those questions of yours, there must be answers, there must be good analysis, and the committee is precisely to do that. Mr. Chung Kok-pan, Leung Ka-lau, Kwok Wai-keung, and Chen Yuen-han are to speak. 4 minutes each. Mr. Chung Kok-pan, for the collection of detailed data on standard working hours or working hours, you interview 10,000 persons and 1,500 professions with relatively longer working hours would be chosen. By balloting, by categorization, how are you going to choose them? How are you going to define the longer working hours? Will you make public your basis of analysis for reference? Will you make public the survey reports? Our Chief Labor Officer can elaborate later because he masters the details. Concerning the working hour survey, one is a territory-wide household survey with sampling. 10,000 employees will be chosen, and the sample will model on that of the Census and Statistics Department, which has got all the information on buildings. It will be a scientific sampling survey. We have home visits to interview 10,000 employees in the hope that we can have detailed information about their working hours, their employment contracts, the provisions on working hours, any compensation for working overtime, and so forth. We'll collect these data. Apart from this large household survey, the committee, together with the relevant departments and the consultancy, will take note of certain professions and trades which may not be largely covered by the household survey. So the consultancy and the department and the committee will discuss objective scenarios. Take, for example, certain occupations may have longer working hours. The working arrangements may be special. So we'll target these special professions. And then there'll be a supplementary questionnaire for the households. So by choosing occupations and professions, we'll ask the interviewees to fill out questionnaires. We hope to receive no less than 1,500 questionnaires, and then together with the large household survey, we'll have a complementary arrangements to understand the working hours of the employees in Hong Kong. Bureau Director, will the reports be made public? As for the reports, usually we have a high degree of transparency for data. For the 2 reports of the working groups, they will analyze and collate the data on working hours, and the committee will also analyze the data received from various avenues. The 2 working groups will submit their reports to the committee. I believe they will report to the public. Chairman, I'd like to follow up on one aspect. The sampling for the household survey, will it be on a district basis? What about the middle class, the grassroots, and the more well-off class? Different households in different districts may give you different answers. Random sample, will it reflect the population sample, which should be an objective method? Will follow the method adopted by the Census and Statistics Department. Proportionate, yes. Leung Ka-lau, Kwok Wai-keung, and Chen Yuen-han. Leung Ka-lau, thank you, Chairman. I have a question for the Bureau Director. I've read the government's paper. You only mention progress. There's not much contents otherwise. We should have more details. Can you give us interim reports with more details? Can you give us reports in stage? Because if they are to submit the final reports, you won't be able to reduce controversy. in the course of consultation, different stakeholders should be interactive. They should know what the committee is doing, what data or information has been collected. The panel should know all these. On behalf of the Medical Association, I attended some consultation sessions. We're quite happy, but Mr. Lau of the Federation of Industries frowned. Dr. Leung Chung-yin seemed not to know certain information, so maybe interim reports at different stages will allow our colleagues to know more. Our colleagues were confused. Dr. Kwok Ka-ki had walked away. He put standard working hours on a par with the EU working hours. He thought that doctors and nurses are not to work extra hours, but the 20,000 nurses of the hospital authority are already working standard working hours. So what's the objective of regulating working hours? He didn't know that. He didn't know how to put forth his opinion. As for Michael Tan's proposal, say if the employment contract stipulates that extra working hours have to be compensated for, but what if there's no rule on standard working hours? So, can you give some preliminary feedback to the panel so that we have a more in-depth knowledge of the issue? Because the lecturer is also a very important stakeholder. Well, your views are very neutral and fair. Well, after meeting the deputations, we find very different views, a wide diversity of views among trade associations, employers, employees, etc., etc. What about interim reports? For interim reports, you want collation and compilation of data for social analysis. Is that your objective? Yes. Well, the committee should not express its own views, but Mr. Lau, after listening to me, could not tolerate any more. He had some exchanges with me. What he thinks, what we think, we have to know. Well, maybe it's not his opinion, but opinion that he has collected. Then we can give him more opinion. The whole process should be interactive. We shouldn't just stop after we've spoken once and you've spoken once. The more ideal situation is I speak once, you speak once. If I don't agree with, I don't agree with you, you can speak again. If I don't agree with you, I can speak again. So an interactive process will be conducive to your final report. We're starting from the 29th of this month all the way up to the end of July. There are 2 months for large public consultation sessions. Then we'll analyze the views received from society and deputations. Then we can compile a working report for you. Then you don't need to read 2 reports. Mr. Kwok Wai-keung? Thank you, Chairman. Well, this issue of standard working hours is nothing new. We've been talking about this for many years. Still, nothing has come forth. So, it is understandable that people are saying that the government is dragging this on. Well, I have seen a lot of advertisements on labor importation, but none on standard working hours. So what should come first? You assist the employers, the business community. What about the employees? They come last. Very simple. If you go shopping, if the scale is cheating you, you report to the Customs and Excise Department. If the employment contract says you should work a certain number of hours, but if that's not the case, something should be done. As Dr. Leung Ka-piu said, our colleagues have confused standard working hours and maximum working hours. Can you do publicity earlier so the members of the public know what's meant by maximum working hours and standard working hours? In society, we always hear people mention these two terms. Once again, we're not talking about highest working hours, but standard working hours. We're not restricting your working hours. After that period of time, you should go home and rest. We're saying that if you work extra hours, you should get compensated. I don't know why this is so difficult to understand. In 2012, you got this very thick yellow page telephone directory, so to speak. Yes, 300 odd pages. Yes, and now you're going to do it afresh. So, what about the resources previously spent? Have they gone down the drain? Well, we are waiting and waiting and waiting, but you act so slowly. We don't know for how long we have to wait. Well, upcoming, we have the change of membership of the LAB. If you have new members, are you going to start afresh? How will you handle this? Well, if the LAB has different members, this SWHC may also have new members. If that is to happen concurrently, what will you do? Well, Leung Chi-Chang and Chen Yuan, if you want to chat, please go outside.
Well, I agree that we should step up with our publicity. Starting this week, there will be district consultation sessions. It's on the front page. Our advertisement is on the front page. It's a banner advertisement. We want to let people know how to attend such sessions. We provide a phone number. We will continue to step up publicity, especially on free newspapers. Secondly, you mentioned the very thick report from the Labour Department in 2012, and are we not now dragging the feet? Well, actually, the report provides a very good foundation, because otherwise the SWHC would not have been able to start its work so effectively. But we have to do more to make sure that the data are comprehensive. In the 2012 report, there was no questions put to employees. The questions were put to employers, and the employers might or might not tell you the whole truth. So we want to ask employees whether they are getting any pay for overtime. So it's not a simple process. The committee has been working very hard, 6 meetings in 13 months. And this committee has been working very hard. It's not there to put up a show. 24 members, and they have a lot of things to take forward. I hope you would allow them some leeway to move forward. So it's very busy to have 5 meetings in 30 months. Chairman, our panel has monthly meetings. Well, you think this is urgent, you should step up with the progress. According to the Labour side, if you do not have the report, they would, ready by the end of the year, they would withdraw, they would quit. This is a big warning given to the government. Yes, we need to have comprehensive discussion in the community, but in the past, this council provided a lot of input to you. How can you say that the committee has been very busy since there were 5 meetings in 10 months? For this term of LegCo, we only have a little bit more than 2 years. How can you prepare for legislation? Can you make all the preparation for legislation on this subject? Because that's the promise of the CE. You give us the impression that you are dragging your feet. Acting Chairman, I've told Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan and ask the administration. We should ask the administration to give us an interim report by the end of the year. And as Dr. Leung has said, you should do this in an interactive manner. So I don't think you're working very hard. You are actually dragging the feet. You want to waste all the time until the current term of government is finished. We're going to have another electrical election in 2016, another CE election in 2017. You must give us a report and also the updated figures. The labor side representatives on the LAB would quit if you cannot come up with a report by the end of the year. You don't have any interim review. You're not making all the necessary preparation for legislation as promised by CY. And the labor side representatives are saying they have already warned you that they won't continue won't allow this to continue if by the end of the year you haven't completed the report. Well, I promise to give you an interim report once we have completed all the tasks on hand. Ms. Chan, some other members have talked about the time frame. We would certainly ask the committee to press ahead in full steam, but we have to face the reality that the two working groups will present their reports by the end of this year. And one of the important tasks will be for the collection of data. Well, the LAB's members representing the labor side would quit if you do not make any progress. I hope we should espouse an accommodative spirit. Well, they're saying that they're not going to tolerate any more delay. Well, we're working, we're moving ahead. We are not dragging our feet. Well, I think we should try to convince them by showing our sincerity. I think according to your replies, you are going to have reports, and then there are no options, and then it will take another few months to have options. If by the summer of 2015 you cannot table a bill in this council, and of course the bill may require another year of scrutiny, and if by 2017 we cannot have the first reading, then legislation is not possible within the current term of government. Or maybe the CE can come to this council, raise the proposal in 2016, and then we have another term, and the next one who comes on might disown what the predecessor did or promised. Secretary, are you confident that before we have the summer break next year, you can present a bill to this council? Well, there are a lot of advanced preparation to be carried out, studies, analysis, data collection. At this point, I cannot give you a promise as specific as that, but I can promise you that the committee would work and move ahead in full steam. I'll queue up again. I don't think we have a second round. I'll give you a minute. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, please respond to the point that you are dragging your feet. You have promised an interim report, but at the end of the year, you must have all the necessary preparation completed for legislation. Otherwise, we will certainly think that you are dragging your feet. And also, the labor side representatives on the SWHC have said that they would quit if after this year they just do not have any options. You have completed at least you have repeated your points 2 times. Secretary, you have to consider this. Apart from asking for an interim report, there are other views expressed by members. The clock is counting, is clicking. There are easier things and there are not so easy things. You have to look at work out something that is acceptable to the community. That's not easy. If you go for legislation, it's not easy to have a consensus. But maybe you should do some things first. Well, I'm not a labor sector member, but Mr. Tang Ka-piu and other members are very unhappy. For example, there are people who are ripped off habitually, and they have to work for additional hours without pay. And Mr. Michael Tin is saying that that you should work out the whole thing, the whole arrangement. And if you go for just arbitration, you end up getting 70% of your entitlement. I hope we can have the first reading of the bill that you can present before July next year. Do you wish to respond? If you're talking about overtime with and overtime pay, will certainly enforce the employment ordinance. Well, but the problem is that it's not really the official overtime, but rather overtime extracted from unwilling workers. You're going to give us an interim report, and then after July this year, after the consultation has been done, they will come back to give us an interim report. We'll put this on the list and we'll monitor the progress. The next item on the agenda, Manpower Projection to 2022, is paper CB 21524 1314-05. I suppose you want to do a PowerPoint presentation? Okay. You can. We have Miss Tam, Miss Annie Tam. Chairman, if I may, I would like to say a few words to introduce the subject. The Labour and Welfare Bureau and the Census and Statistics Department, as well as the Financial Analysis Division, have joined hands in charting the trend on manpower and any shortfall or gaps between demand and supply of different levels of manpower. The latest projection would take us all the way to the 2022, and that is in the coming 8 to 10 years. And our workforce would increase from 3.52 million to the peak in 2018, that is 3.71 million, and then drop to a low of 3.1 million in 2035, and then we see another modest growth to 3.6 million beyond that because of the aging population. In 2012, 14 of every 100 people were elderly people, but now for every 100 people, 1 in 3 people in Hong Kong is an elderly person. If we look at the GDP trend growth rate, if it's at 4%, And we estimate that in 2020 there will be a manpower shortage. 617,000 is the number of the gap. Of course, it depends on the trend GDP growth. 3% will be different from a 5% growth. So please bear in mind this basis of the projection. To tie in to cope with the manpower projection and the manpower shortfall, the Population Policy Committee chaired by the FS have, or the Steering Committee on Population Policy have looked into the relevant issues, and the relevant findings and observations can be found in the last paragraphs of the paper. But this assumption is different from the one on the long-term fiscal health. Please explain why. I'll use a PowerPoint presentation to introduce the paper because it's rather complicated. This is not the first time we do this. This is a long-term task. We were here in 2012, and we projected up to 2020 that at the time, and now we are 2 years ahead, and then we would project up to 2022. So it's a 10-year midterm projection. According to overseas experience, this is a projection that would be more reliable. And there are three components. We have some projections on labor supply with respect to different age groups, genders, and educational attainment standards. And we also look at 12 economic sectors, 9 professional groups, and 6 educational attainment levels. And if we look at the demand and then the supply, then we know that there may be a shortfall, and we have breakdowns in accordance with the 6 educational attainment levels. We have relevant data, and we have also surveyed people in different economic sectors. On the question of population growth, we will not just look at 2012 and 2022. At that time, we'd look at 2018, 2035, and 2041.
Population is to grow from 2013 684,000 odd to 798,000 odd in 2018. However, you have to note the following. I'd like to point out that the age is ever lowering in terms of percentage, from 0 to 6 years old all the way up to 54 years old. The proportion of young people is ever dropping. From 55 to 59 years old, you'll see a rise in the percentage of young people. And most obviously, at the age of 65 years old, there's a sharp rise. In 2012, 14.3%. By 2041, 32%. As we said just now, we've confirmed that Hong Kong is now having an aging population, and that will be a trend. For labor supply, let's start with 15 years old, because below that, we don't have any youngster in the workforce. So let's look at the different age group. According to what we know, we'll try to do a calculation to see how many people will join the workforce. You see the red figures. You have to pay special attention to them. Below the age group 50 to 54, we have a drop, and starting from 55 to 59, there's an increase. That means for the young members of the workforce, the participation rate is not that high. So from 2012 to 2022, there'll be a growth of 157,000 odd, an average annual growth of 0.4%. All right, by gender, you discover that if you look at males and females, the male working population would drop from 68.7% to 66.5%. As for female labor, the participation rate will rise from 49.6% to 50.5%. Let's look at the real situation. The male workforce is aging more seriously than the female workforce and will have a high participation rate on female workers, a rise of 6%, more than the 0.7% for overall population, because prospect income are improving for the females. However, the female participation rate has risen because of two factors. They have remained single more and they get married later. For education level, for the red figures, you see the increases. So you see a plus for certificates, diploma, associate degree, bachelor degree, and postgraduate studies. Well, after the post-war period, we have a baby boom and they're retiring. For those with senior secondary education level, about 100,000 people will retire between 2012 to 2022. 250,000 at junior secondary level will also retire during that period. Given that supply situation, we have to look at demand. We analyzed 12 trades and industries. The economic sector, 390, 100 people more. Annual rise of 0.9%, higher than the 0.4% I mentioned just now. The red figures are the net positive growth for those sectors. For the black figures, they show a dropping trend. The traditional occupations like agriculture, fishing and quarrying, manufacturing, electricity, gas, water and waste management. And for the growth, they are more knowledge-based, like information and communications, financial services, professional and business services. Now from this you see the red figures show the growth trends and the black figures show the dropping trends. For the blue figures, the more conventional trades like the agriculture and fisheries, technicians and so forth. The professionals, supportive professionals and managerial workers are growing. And youngsters are more and more inclined to take up clerical sectors. So for the higher demands, they belong to the sectors of a higher educational level. For junior secondary level and below, the demand is dropping. Still, we're moving into a knowledge-based economy. Altogether, 250,000 workers will retire. They belong to the junior secondary and primary level. So there's not much demand in terms of secondary level. But after comparison, we see that in those two sectors in 2022, there will be huge discrepancies. That is a discrepancy of over 100,000 people. And for first degrees and postgraduate degrees, a difference of 53,000 people. But if you take them all together, only 2,000 odd. Some postgraduate leavers, postgraduates may leave Hong Kong. So in terms of supply and demand, for senior secondary, junior secondary, and primary level, more people will be retiring. So in future, when we move to a knowledge-based economy, we'll be competing for such human resources. Now, net GDP growth of 4%, then we'll lack 117,900 people, 3%, 59,700 people, 5%, 177,700. If 2%, it will be around or below 59,000, not as high as 59,000. Our own observation is as follows. But of course, members can have their own observation. But we'd like to point out that at the macro level, these are the general trends. We're not doing very precise demographic projection because we're talking about manpower projection for 10 years. And if you have to do it sector by sector, it is very difficult to get it accurate. We would like to know the general trend in terms of supply and demand, but for dedicated occupations and sectors, we cannot ensure that a graduate will take up a job in his own discipline or in other disciplines. And there are employees who may shift from one sector to another. So individual studies may have detailed planning studies. So more details can be grasped by various sectors. The future development, policy support, manpower characteristics, relevant directions, and others. Say for elderly services, what is our policy on elderly services? Existing residential care homes and future residential care homes, etc., will help in mapping out the future plans. For the Elderly Commission, in the next 2 years, they'll have a specific plan for manpower. For Food and Health Bureau, Dr. Ko is leading a working group on medical and demographic strategy. That is actually a review study. And then further on, we observe that for manpower supply, demand, and shortage, we try to conclude from past trends and then project from existing results. According to the Census and Statistics Department, in 2011, they have some statistical results. We discover that when there's a discrepancy between supply and demand, there are certain approaches that we can adopt. In the 2011 survey, we discovered that females and homemakers, as well as retirees, if they have a suitable environment, they can work as volunteers. And 8% of home carers and 5% of early retirees are willing to work. So rough estimation is that by 2022, we'll have 30-odd females and 13,000-odd early retirees who are willing to work. And there are 14,000 people not in economic activities. So when we have more human resources in future, we can try to get them to work. If we have more than 8% of women and more than 5% of retirees working, the situation will be better. Last time, we also submitted our report to the Population Policy Committee, a steering committee. They also published a press release on these 10 areas and issues where we should follow up. And the third issue involves a balance between family and females. And the fourth point is that a longer working period should be adopted in accordance with the demographic situation. So if more females are to join the workforce, in 2022 there will be a higher supply of human resources. Thank you. Wang Kwok Heng, Chen Kim Pok, Kwok Wai Kang, Poon Siu Ping, Long Ka Lo, Long Kwok Hong, and Chen Yun Han would like to speak. Any more? If not, well, don't exceed your time limit, 4 minutes each. Then we won't be behind schedule. Wang Kwok Heng, thank you, Chairman. As for the final part of the study, that is on policies, I'd like to offer my views. First of all, for issue 3, that is to assist women, I believe the administration should seriously study support services in terms of childcare. Many women are not able to work because of family commitment. It's because childcare problems remain unresolved. Therefore, the administration should carry out a follow-up study so as to formulate future directions. Then we can unleash more female human resources. As for enhancing the employment support for ethnic minorities and the disabled, I'd like to emphasize the enhanced support for the disabled. I've been talking about this in LegCo. Well, you're going to submit a report to us at the end of this year for the loss of one limb. For those PWDs with loss of one limb, well, when we petitioned to you, we told you that they're working, but they don't enjoy the $2 concessionary transport fare. So how can you say that you're supporting them? So this is not a hollow support for the PWDs with loss of one limb. You must come up with some specific solutions. So I'd like to ask the Bureau whether they've forgotten this. You've promised to give us a report on solutions. So I'd like to listen to you in a moment. Thirdly, for points 7 and 8, well, I'll speak on them at the same time. As a member of the labor sector, I'm quite worried. In number 8, you say that you will consider enhancing the labor importation mechanism. Well, is this tantamount to expanding the labor importation scheme? Although the pretext is that you should not affect the interest of local workers. Still, I'm very worried. The Bureau should make it clear that employment opportunities for locals should be given priority. So for the labor importation scheme, you should just follow the existing policy under the supervision of both employers and employees. So the mechanism should be adhered to rather than bypassed. So would you please pay attention to the terminology that I use?
The first point is about child care. To unleash manpower who are women, and we must do that. We have a number of measures. First, in the districts, for after-school care, child care, for those in the age group of 6 to 12. Some centers will offer the service up to 9 p.m., including the weekends, holidays, and so on and so forth. At present, they don't offer such service during holidays and weekends. For children under 6, well, the line is now drawn at 12 for service scope. We also have an injection of helping the students after school hours. $200 million from the government, another $200 million matched by the business sector. We'll continue to improve this. And for persons with disabilities, the Permanent Secretary is leading the working group to look into this. We will come back to give you a briefing by the end of the year. As for labor importation, the starting point must be that whatever we do, we should not jeopardize the interests of local workers, will not depress wages, will not replace local workers. Mr. Tang Ka-piu, when you calculate or project manpower, have you factored in the 150 people who are admitted on a daily basis based on single entry permits or one-way permit holders? Most of them are just primary educated. And also in Table 8, you mentioned that those with graduate education, there will be a surplus of 50,000 people. Would you be willing to give them an early warning so that people would not take up postgraduate education? Because otherwise they would end up complaining. But these people can go to other markets for employment. For example, they can go to the mainland. Now you see a big difference between demand and supply. What are you going to do about it? Chairman, before my colleague responds, I would have to say that the 150 people admitted from the mainland on a daily basis are already factored in. We have 6 education levels here. We have shared the findings with other bureaus, including the Education Bureau. According to the Education Bureau, for first degree holders, they are welcome by employers. So are postgraduate degree holders. So we can look at the 2 levels together. If so, then the difference is not it's just a difference of a surplus of 2,600. And some of the postgraduate degree holders, they may not stay in Hong Kong. It seems that it's better that we achieve a balance. The relevant policy bureaus are aware of this. If you look at the 2 levels, then it's not a big problem. It's just a surplus of 2,600. So, but you are saying that even if you hold a master's degree or doctorate degree, they will have to take up jobs requiring a lower qualification. But as more and more people get higher qualifications, it's just expected. I think it's important to give people the information in advance so that they can do a better job in career planning. We don't have a crystal ball. No one knows what would happen in 10 years' time. And frankly speaking, you can make reference to the figures, but don't put all your trust in them. Well, let's say we assume that they are reasonable. Then I would give you a round of applause. Why? Because we are going to see positive growth in the coming 10 years. Economic development will be good. But will it lead to the problem? There's a shortfall, a manpower shortfall of 200,000. It's 170,000 or 177,000 representing the shortfall. But that's under the 5% growth scenario. Since you know this trend, you have this projected framework, what are the departments doing to prepare for this? If you look at the 10 policy areas, they are very vague. Mr. Wong Kok-heng refers to point number 7, number 8, enhancing the labor importation mechanism. In the last report on population policy, we already knew that some 80,000 talents have been admitted. It's impossible that they don't have any adverse impact on local graduates. How can you transfer the skills and expertise from these non-local people to local people? I've asked about this many times. And also for those trades where we find the 80,000 imported employees, are you going to step up training? Why hasn't anyone talked about this? The fact that we have imported 80,000 people to work in the relevant trades. You talk about enhancing training, and you want to do away or reduce mismatch between skills and jobs. But you are not talking about specific trades. Let's say I have taken a sub-degree program, but it's not in the same field where you find jobs. You should tell people as early as you can. People are smart. They won't just rush on and find themselves caught in a dead end. But we are not talking about projection of the general trend. We're not talking about projections that are so precise that you can talk about the implications for specific trades. And of course, as you have said, it's good reference. The relevant policy bureaus may have to do its job to having regard to the findings. For example, the construction industry has to do something, and the FH Bureau has an interdepartmental steering committee looking at the manpower requirements. In my bureau, we are going to have a long-term planning on the manpower to care for the elderly. So every bureau must do its job in the light of the findings. And this projection is based on a trend growth rate 4% of real growth. So the difference is 117,000 or so. You mentioned the elimination of mismatch. This is the biggest challenge because the labor market is flexible. You hold certain qualifications, you may not work in these in the same field. I agree that the government should do more to reduce the mismatch between the qualifications and jobs. Mr. Poon Siu-ping, I'm also concerned about Table 8, as referred to by Mr. Wong Kok-heng, and that is the difference between demand and supply. There's a shortage of 50,000 odd for first degree holders. There will be a shortfall of 50,000. The Secretary has said that the Education Bureau has been informed, but you must take action as soon as possible. After you have taken a sub-degree or associate degree course, you are unable to find jobs. It will be a waste of resources. So you should instead provide more first degree places. The paper doesn't tell us the follow-up action that you are going to take, and of course, in the 10 measures, you are going to enhance childcare services. What exactly are you going to do? And some colleagues are concerned about the enhancement to the existing labor importation mechanism. It's in age. You consider enhancing the existing labor importation mechanism. and we are concerned that this means relaxation of the labor importation mechanism. Do you have anything more specific to propose? The first concern is the follow-up action and how to enhance the labor importation mechanism. And also there's a concern, there's a suggestion that our ETOs in overseas countries should be more proactive in attracting talents. For example, the Singaporean ETO would try to scout talents in the host countries and invite them to emigrate to Singapore. Should we do the same and ask our ETOs to do this for Hong Kong? Or we'll consider this. And as for the enhancement to the labor importation mechanism, we would we'll consider the enhancement on the basis of maintaining the existing mechanism, and the premise must be that we should not affect local employment. We will not jeopardize the interests of local workers. These are the preconditions for enhancement. Mr. Dr. Leung Ka-Lau, I just want to offer some comments. I don't really need a response from the Secretary. First, from a scientific point of view, you should tell us that the data give you a 95% confidence interval. You just give us the mean figures. So perhaps you should ask your statistician to help us. For example, a shortfall of 117,000. If the confidence interval is from a negative figure to a big positive figure, then it doesn't mean anything.
And then the colleague on my side already said that for any estimation, there are bound to be errors. If there are to be measures to boost manpower, if the estimation goes wrong, the economy becomes poorer, more people will become jobless. If economic growth is good, the demand for manpower is huge. If we don't have sufficient manpower, our economy will be restricted. So we really have to consider the scenario of wrong estimation. So do you have a good method to allow you to have flexibility? That is, if your projection is wrong, whether on the positive side or negative side, you'll be able to cope. My colleagues in the hospital authority hate me very much because whatever I discuss, I go to standard working hours. All right? When compared with 379,400, you're only 3% in terms of deviation, given your figures here. So whether you overestimate or underestimate, you must allow the employees to earn more if they work more. If it is a 3% discrepancy, an extra 3 to 4 working hours will top up the lacking manpower. The postgraduates will take up the graduate posts, so you don't need to have more university places. Well, but you still have to adjust your university places. Well, that means you don't need so many postgraduate places. For senior secondary and junior secondary levels, you may have some mismatch. You have to enhance the quality of manpower. Then theoretically, the mismatch is even more serious. More diploma holders and sub-degree holders are lacking in number. So, given what you said, you're encouraging Well, this may not be pleasing to the trade unions. You are encouraging more automation for the junior jobs. Watchmen will become security guards. The so-called coolies will work in the logistics industry. Those originally selling fake CDs should go into a more regular industry or regulated industry. So you'll be able to estimate the working hours more accurately. You have a projection here, so apart from the measures for boosting manpower, you need to have other measures. Mr. Lam Kok Hong? Mr. Chairman, concerning standard working hours, this is of course pegged to wages. The SARG has never tried to handle the issue squarely. Well, Dr. Leung Ka-lau was saying that with a shortage of 3%, if some employees can work extra hours, then the problem can be solved. Well, of course, that can be a solution. But Dr. Leung, what about those employees who fall ill as a result of working excessively long hours? Then we have to handle the problem in terms of working hours. At the moment, some workers don't work enough working hours. Well, Ms. Chen Yun-han always mentioned the so-called 418 issue. Sometimes the employees just don't have enough work to do. Well, there are a lot of bizarre issues. Well, in interviews, when you ask a person, are you working, he say yes. Do you work 418, so to speak? Well, if it is 418, then it will be very different from non-418 scenarios. All right, for child care services and after-school care, you try to bundle them together. For community nannies also. Well, community nannies, they take care of school children. Do they take care of disabled elders as well? Women may be tied down to disabled elders and school children. And then community nanny is working at $19 per hour. So Mr. Matthew Cheung is always messy in his remarks. Now, women are tied down to their families not just because of their children. Sometimes a woman may be going to work while his or her child is given after-school care. You always tell us that after-school care is enhanced. But what about household chores? What if a woman has to take care of an elder like her father-in-law? Well, $19 an hour. Nobody would like to work at such a wage level. $19 per hour. So I'm talking about this. You're so messy in your remarks. Give us data and statistics. For after-school childcare, you use that as an excuse for a lack of community nannies, and then you don't open more nurseries. In terms of planning, the Town Planning Board does not plan for such services. So how are you going to go about it? It's just empty talk. You want to unleash the workforce, the labor force of women. Well, look at these three categories. Every time when we say you don't have enough community nannies, you say you have after-school childcare, but that stops after a particular hour. And what if a woman wants to go out to work? Where should he put his children and elders? So use your brain. Don't play us around. Don't fool us. Ask the women themselves. $19 per hour to take care of children. Who will do it? Chen Yun-han? Chairman, for the 10 points mentioned by the Bureau Director, of course, I have huge reservation over points 7 and 8. I don't trust the government. You say, while not affecting the interests of local workers, you will try to import labor. The government is cheating us, is playing tactics. Well, there is a steering group to bypass the LAB. If you come to LegCo for money, if you don't make yourself clear enough, if you don't go through the LAB, will definitely not support you. Last time, I did not cast my vote, so it's very risky for the government's motion. No, apart from points 7 and 8, for the remaining issues, Bureau Director, I'm not trying to destroy all your efforts. Just look at B. Formulating a blueprint for sustainable land supply to cope with the future demand arising from housing, employment, and other social and economic development needs, and fostering a quality living environment to encourage family formation, improve people's quality of life, and attract foreign investors and talents. Bureau Director, I came in late because I was discussing with another 2 bureaus in relation to street economy. For microeconomy, we need a land policy to support them. At the moment, the government has no policy for creative industries, street industries, street art, and so on. Well, Longhair was reasonable in his remarks. If not done anything to tackle the 3 issues, are community nannies volunteers? Should they not be paid reasonably? The Cooperative Societies Ordinance must be revamped. Back then, I talked to the director of Egg and Fish, and even now, you're not coming up with anything. Hundreds of thousands of women have working potentials. Tell us, what are you going to do with community nannies, childcare services, and after-school childcare? It's just like elderly services. You have to solve the problems. Realistically, if you're so interested, I can invite all the women to come here. I talked to them. They're very annoyed. They would like to unleash their labor, their manpower, but there's insufficient community support. I don't want to be harsh. The Bureau Director only knows how to talk. He's not competent enough. How to assimilate the 540,000 women? For the 9-year-olds, you will punish the parents if they leave their children at home. In law, that is not allowed. Well, when your child is not yet 16 years old, you cannot leave him or her at home. So, Bureau Director, I'm not trying to destroy all your efforts in these 10 points. You really have to talk to see why. You have to unleash the workforce of the 540,000 women. Bureau Director, you don't need to answer my questions. Well, Bureau Director, you can answer in the remaining time. Mr. Chairman, for these 10 issues, the relevant bureaus must conduct in-depth studies and come up with specific practicable measures. It's not empty talk. Ms. Chan mentioned labor importation. Infrastructure projects must not bypass LAB. I can say this, we will never bypass the LAB, otherwise I won't be talking to you. Well, the mechanism will remain unchanged. It's just that the preparation time will be compressed. Doctors, you have to consult them, but for taking the blood pressure, for taking the body temperature, you can do all these quicker. And then elderly services, as well as childcare services. You have to handle the senior citizens and the children at different stages. You have different challenges: infant stage, preschool stage, during the stage of schooling, etc., etc. There are differences. Well, what specific policies do you have to unleash the manpower of 540,000 women. Well, not enough time for the bureau director to answer. $200 million will be injected into the fund. In recent days, I met with 2 batches of women in Sham Shui Po and Tin Shui Wai, respectively. Their emphasis were child care. So we'll present you with an overall blueprint. There's no other business, so meeting adjourned. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, departmental colleagues.